So before we get into today's video, I just want to come on here and state the obvious for a second. We're in a very scary, uncertain time. This can be a very depressing time for a lot of people, but it's also a very important time. We are making history right now. So first I want to talk about coronavirus. This virus is here. I don't think Miss Rona is going anywhere anytime soon. So please be safe. I understand that we can't put our life on hold. We can't not ever go to work again. We can't not go grocery shopping. We want to go to the movies, we want to go shopping, we want to go do this stuff, and it's fine if you want to, but just be safe. Social distance, there's no reason why you shouldn't stay 6 feet apart from someone you don't know. I don't want you that close to me, even coronavirus or not. Don't get that close. If I can do this and hit you, you're too close. Okay, stay 6 feet apart. When you get home, your hands with warm soap and water. And please, for the love of God, wear your mask. Stop it. I see a lot of you on Facebook say, I'm not wearing my mask for this. Wear the mask. Just wear the mask. Wear it. Hey, wear the freaking mask. Stop being that person. Wear the mask, okay? And then second, Black Lives Matter. I don't know why that's such a controversial topic. It's basic human rights, and I don't get why it's so controversial for a community to want basic human rights. Black Lives Matter. If you don't agree with that, you are not someone I want in my life personally. Black Lives Matter. All lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. And it should not be such a controversial topic, and it should not be something they have to fight for so hard to get rights. Black Lives Matter. And with that, I hope you enjoy this video. I hope that it scares you, but in a fun way. And I hope that you can get away from the scariness for just a few minutes. I wanted to film this video because I love the paranormal and I love makeup. And it's my escape for just an hour or two. So I hope you guys like this video, and I hope it's a good escape for you guys as well. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Already, I'm like scared to film this. I'm home alone and decided it was a good idea to film a video about ghosts. So that's a good idea. Anyway. Guys, it's Chase and welcome back. Hi, welcome back. My tongue is blue because I'm drinking Mountain Dew Liberty Brew or something like that. If you are new here, hi, I don't know how you found this video or this channel, but I'm very happy you did. I will start with introductions. My name is Chase. I am the most inconsistent person in the world, especially when it comes to my YouTube channel. And I am a hot mess. I'm a hot ass mess. So, if you like hot messes, if you are one, if you are with me on that, and you want to hop on board the Hot Mess Express, then subscribe, hit that red little button. This train goes full speed ahead. It doesn't stop. It does stop. It stopped for 6 months. I haven't uploaded in 6 months. So, I just kind of wanted to real quick talk about this and what this video is going to be. This has went through a lot of changes. At first it was going to be called Doing My Makeup and, where I sat down, did my makeup, and talked about whatever I wanted. That took a turn because really it was when coronavirus started. No one wanted to see me sit down and talk about why I dropped out of college or anything like that, you know? Which, hey, I dropped out of college. So I just decided against it. And then it was going to be a makeup tutorial, $10 or less. Drugstore makeup tutorial. So I'm using all drugstore makeup today. I love makeup. I love playing with makeup. I love talking about makeup. But I kind of thought something else I love is the paranormal. And the last video I uploaded, I talked about doing a paranormal series where I sat down and talked about paranormal places, the history, what happened, all that. So I thought I'd sit down, do my makeup, and talk about the paranormal side of stuff. And I decided to do it while I'm home alone. So that's good. So that long introduction to say this is a new, hopefully new series on my channel. I don't have a name for it, but it's just me sitting down talking about haunted places and about ghosts. And I hope you guys like it. I'm very excited for it. And this will be uploaded on Saturday. So this is the official First, spooky Saturday. Hopefully every Saturday, but we know how inconsistent I can be, so let's not hold our breath. And without further ado, 3 minutes in, let's get into the video. I'm gonna kind of follow this like Bailey Sarian does hers, which is kind of an inspiration for this. Also, I'm looking down because I have my mirror here, I'm doing makeup, and I have notes. So, that's why I am looking down a lot and not looking up at you. Today, for the first video, I thought we would talk about somewhere local, close to where I live. I have visited this place numerous times. I have been on 3 ghost walks there, and have been around and heard the stories and everything like that. And it is Malabar Farm State Park. If you live anywhere near Mansfield or Richland County, you might have heard someone just started mowing. You might know of Malabar Farm State Park. It is a state park located in Lucas, Ohio. It is right near another state park, actually, Mohegan State Park, which is beautiful. Malabar has a lot of hiking trails for people. Malabar Farm has a very long history. For what I'm talking about, this is dating back to the 1800s. That's where I'm going to kind of start my video. At Malabar Farm, there are a lot of buildings and just really beautiful places you can go to. There are 3 farms. I believe they are actually still in working condition too. I know at least one of them is. There is a place called the Pew Cabin. There is a inn, a bed and breakfast, and there is 2 houses on the property. One, I don't think anyone lives in them now, but I know people used to live in one of them. And there is the big house, which is like a mansion, I guess, kind of. Back then when this place was, when Malabar Farm was a place where people lived, it was considered a mansion. Now with how big house, I don't know if it would be considered a mansion, but it's called the big house there. Malabar Farm is known for a lot of things, but the one thing that I'm sure a lot of people would know is Shawshank Redemption. It was actually filmed, the opening scene was filmed at Pew Cabin, which is still there at Malabar Farm. I believe Pew Cabin is in the opening scene. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but I'm pretty sure it's the scene where he catches his wife or girlfriend cheating on him. It's in Pew Cabin. So, like I said, our story is starting all the way back in the mid to early 1800s, and it's starting with the Rose family. The Rose family consisted of David, who was the husband, Rebecca, who was the wife, and then Walter, who was their son. And in like the early to more like mid 1800s, they found out that they were pregnant, David and Rebecca were, and they had their daughter, Celie Rose, who was born on March 13th, 1873. Celie Rose was 6 years old. She and her family, well, she didn't really because she was 6, but her family and her packed up and moved to, back then it was called Pleasant Valley, but now it is Malabar Farm State Park. Something you should know about Celie Rose is that she was kind of a miracle baby, I guess you could say. They had one child, and I don't know if they were even trying for another one because they were both in their late 40s, I think. And back then, because Rebecca was in her like 40s, and back then that was not heard of to have a child that late in life. That was something that just did not happen. Celie Rose, and a lot of people say this was because of her parents' age back then, she had a mental disability. I could not find, I tried to do some research, tried to look it up. I could not find anything on her mental disability. They just said that she had a mental disability, and a lot of places said that she was a very disturbed girl. Back then, when you had a mental disability, you were just deemed dumb or stupid. No one tried to help her, she didn't have the help that she needed. She was just kind of deemed as dumb, and that was it. She was bullied a lot in school. She was called dumbbell Sealy along a lot of other things, and she didn't have a lot of friends in school. She had a few friends, but not a whole lot. But despite that, her family treated her like she was normal. They didn't treat her any differently than they treated Walter, who was her older brother. And she had a pretty normal life. Parents made sure to keep it that way. They wanted her to have a normal life and not feel like she was an outcast or different from anybody else at the school that she was going to in the town that she was living in. So like I said, she did have a few friends. I know she had 2 girlfriends, and I don't remember. I think the one's name is Terry, and I could be completely wrong. I don't remember exactly. I couldn't find the one friend's name, and the other one I found briefly, but I don't know. I don't remember if it was Terry or not. That's just kind of what comes to mind. And then she had one guy friend, and his name was Guy Berry. As Sealy got older, people started describing, I saw this again in a lot of websites and things that I researched, that they were saying she had the body of a young woman, but the mind of an 8-year-old girl. But as she started maturing, she started getting feelings for Guy Berry. And now in her mind, these feelings were mutual. Guy liked her back, but in reality, he did not. He liked her as a friend, and he thought that she was a very good friend, but he didn't really like her romantically. And in my mind, again, I don't know if this is fact, but in my mind, I believe that he was actually talking to someone else and in talks of marrying this woman, but I could be wrong. But in Sealy's mind, they were getting married, and there were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And this went on throughout the summer of 1896. It was all Sealy talked about to her friends, to her family, even to Guy. Guy knew about this. Guy was aware of her wanting to marry him and her kind of infatuation with him. But from, again, what I have read and what I have heard, Guy was a very nice guy. He didn't want to hurt her because he did care about her. That was his friend, and he didn't want to hurt her by telling her, like, hey, I don't like you in that way, and we aren't getting married. Oh, I went really dark on this eye. So finally, during the summer of 1896, Guy had kind of had enough. It was getting to the point, like I said, she was talking to this nonstop to her friends. All she would talk about was Guy and how she loved him and he loved her and they were getting married. That's all she would talk about to her family, is about Guy and how, you know, they were in love and they were getting married. And I kind of wonder what her family thought. Like, were they just kind of like, okay. Like, it finally got to the point where Guy couldn't even do his work. He couldn't, I think he worked on a farm or he worked with her dad or something. Celia would keep coming up to him. He worked at a point to where she was able to go talk to him at work. And I know that he lived fairly close to her too. This looks like a muddy mess on camera. Ooh. He worked and lived close enough to her to where she could come and see him at work and talk to him and kind of distract him from his work. So it finally got to the point in this summer that he decided he was going to let her down easy and he was going to tell her a little white lie. She came over where he was working and was talking to him about getting married, and he told her, well, Sealy, we can't get married because our parents don't approve. Which back then seemed like a really good lie, because back then the parents had to approve before you get married. The father had to say yes, you know, it had to be that kind of thing. So if both families didn't approve of the marriage, it wasn't going to happen. And so I'm sure in his mind, and really in my mind too, you think, oh, that makes sense. That's actually a pretty good lie. And you figure she would just kind of be like, oh, okay, like that, like I still love you, but like I get it, you know? Well, that is not what happened, ladies and gentlemen, because if it was, we would not be sitting here talking right now. Sealy gets furious, and she goes back to her house, and she's all sorts of upset. In my mind, it's like the typical, like, storms up into a room and slams the door shut, but I'm sure that's not what happened. I don't know what happened, but I know that she was furious. The next morning, she wakes up, and everything's fine. Her mom is making breakfast. She offers to help her mom. And everything seems fine. And they kind of think that maybe she's over Guy and that whole crush. Well, baby, she was not over Guy or that crush. During this breakfast, they had cottage cheese. That does not sound appetizing to me. It doesn't sound like something that I would want for breakfast, but to each their own. And I don't know how Celie was able to get her hands on the cottage cheese. I know that she started helping her mom with the breakfast, and I know that she at some point said like, oh, let me help with the cottage cheese, or let me make the cottage cheese. But at some point she was able to get her hands on this cottage cheese, and then she went out to the barn that they had on property, and she got Rough on Rats arsenic poisoning and put a little bit into the cottage cheese and then mixed it in and then yelled, breakfast is ready. So at breakfast, Celie lies and says that she's not feeling too well, so she's just going to eat a light breakfast, if anything at all. Her mom eats, but she only eats a little bit of the cottage cheese because she said that she also wasn't feeling super hungry. And her brother and father eat normal. They eat the cottage cheese. They have a normal meal. After they eat breakfast, the day is normal. Celie's father, David, and brother, Walter, go to work. Her mom and her stay at home. Her mom starts just, sewing, doing housework, doing dishes, whatever. And Celie sits back and waits for her plan to start working. I am going to pause real quick and throw on some mascara, and I will be right back. Okay, she is back. She has got mascara absolutely everywhere, and that's not the tea on that. But anyway, back to the story. The day goes on as normal until eventually Celie's mom tells her, hey, I'm not feeling too well, and at one point ends up asking her, will you get your brother and your father to come back home because I'm not feeling good? And Celie's like, yeah, I'll totally do that. And then she goes and gets her father and her brother, and turns out they have also come down with whatever her mom has come down with. And it's just very mysterious, and no one has no idea what's going on. So they all get home. They are all sick. I believe even Celie was pretending to be sick and acting like she didn't feel good either, and that they've all come down with this strange sickness all of a sudden. And by the end of the night, Celie's father, David, passes away from arsenic poisoning. So Celie ends up being the first one to get better and starts kind of taking care of her family. And by the end of that week, her brother Walter has also passed away. And at this point, the police are completely stumped. They have no idea what is going on, and they just kind of assume that it's a sickness that has spread across this family, and that the family's just very unlucky to have it all at the same time. Well, Rebecca, since she did not eat as much cottage cheese as Celie's father and brother, Rebecca starts getting better. So now this is where the story kind of takes two paths for me, because from what I remember being told, and from my knowledge, Celie doesn't like that her mother is getting better. She's afraid that if her mom gets better, she won't be able to marry Guy. However, from articles that I read, they stated that Celie's mom started getting better and then slowly started realizing what Celie had done and learned that Celie was kind of the culprit behind this whole thing. And when the police came to ask Celie questions, because they started to suspect that Celie had something to do with this, her mom kind of coached her on what to say and do. That way she wouldn't get in trouble and wouldn't get arrested. I don't know what the truth is. I actually did reach out to Malabar and tried to get in contact with someone there to ask them about this. And they never got back with me, but we are in the middle of a global pandemic, so I'm assuming they probably just aren't in office right now. Oh my god. The ghost. So either way, Celie's mom does start getting better, and she starts kind of regaining her strength, Now, whether she finds out if Celie did this or not, I really don't know. I don't remember that part of the story. But Rebecca does start getting better, and Celie does not like that. So Celie is the one taking care of her mom. She's the one, like, her mom still can't really, like, get up and do stuff around the house. She can't make her own food. She's still very weak. And she wasn't able to eat. She just, whenever, like, she wasn't hungry, she had no appetite. And eventually she said, like, hey, I'm starting to get hungry. Do you think I could get some soup? And Celie's like, yeah, no problem. And Celie gets her mom soup, but then slips more Revlon arsenic poisoning into the soup. At the same time, Celie also makes a pie for Guy, which that rhymes, and she puts poison in the pie as well. And she tells him, feed this to your family, but don't eat any of it. Only feed it to your family. Well, he finds that odd, so instead of feeding it to his family, he feeds it to the chickens. He crumbles it. I don't know. He tears it up, and he feeds it to the chickens. And by the end of the night, all of the chickens are dead. I know it's probably a bad time, but the vine, look at all those chickens, just popped into my head. But that was probably bad timing, so we'll move on. I don't know if anyone, like, they were like, huh, what a coincidence. I don't know, because I feel like that would have been evidence enough to be like, hey, Celie murdered her family, but, or I don't know if, like, Guy just didn't go and tell anyone. I don't know, but nothing happened from it. And then Rebecca, Celie's mom, does end up passing away from being poisoned again. Her immune system just wasn't strong enough for a second round. Okay, well, it didn't sound right. But her body wasn't strong enough, and she does end up passing away. The police are stumped. They have no leads. They are clueless. This is going to be really gross, but, like, I'm not picking my nose, I promise. I'm doing it so I can blend out the crevice. Anyway, I look like Miss Piggy. Everyone is stumped except the town's sheriff. He still believes that Celie is behind the murders. He thinks that, well, and they're not technically murders yet, but he thinks that they were murdered and that Celie was the reason for the murders. He comes up with a plan to have Terry, which is one of Celie's best friends, go over to her house and kind of, like, give her condolences to the family, and in hopes that Celie will confess because Terry is her best friend. Reluctantly, Terry agrees. Terry doesn't think that Celie could do something like this, so she kind of does it to prove the sheriff wrong and be like, yeah, I'll do it. That way you can figure out that Celie had nothing to do with this and it was just a freak accident. So Terry goes over there and her and Celie are talking, and Celie is normal. She's not really grieving, and so Terry kind of brings up her family and her condolences. In my mind, she is kind of making it to where Celie is going to be like, oh, like, I know, thank you so much, like, I'm devastated. And she doesn't get that. Instead, Celie tells her that it's fine because now her and Guy can get married. And Terry is like, what? And that is when Celie confesses. The sheriff is there, he heard the whole thing, and that is enough to get Celie arrested. And there's actually only one picture I can find of Celie online if you Google Celie Rose, and it is her in the jailhouse after getting arrested. And you would have no idea she's in a jailhouse because she's sitting there smiling, and she looks so pretty in the picture, and I'm like, ooh. So Celie gets arrested, and she's put on trial for the murders of David, Rebecca, and Walter Rose. So Celie is put on trial, and the whole town is just, I mean, they're in shock. Who wouldn't be? You know, this woman who was, well, I mean, adored by most people, I'm gonna assume, but also people kind of viewed her as dumb. How could she murder her whole family? So the trial goes on, and she is found not guilty. And at first, I was like, how is she found not guilty? Well, she's found not guilty by reason of insanity. And that's when I'm like, oh, because the people in the jury pretty much said, you know, she's not in her right mind. Like, she's slower than normal people. So she's found guilty, or she's found not guilty by reason of insanity. And the term that she is given, she has to spend the rest of her life in a hospital for people that have mental disabilities or deemed like unsafe for society. I don't know the politically correct term for it, so just for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it an asylum. And that is where she is put for the rest of her life. Ended up dying in March of 1934, and people said that she was lovely. She was very nice to be around. She was nice to talk to. She was an amazing person. And they said that she didn't have knowledge of what she did. She was actually carried around a locket of her mom and dad in it, and she would ask them where they were, why they weren't coming to visit her. And when she finally found out what happened, she was devastated, and she told them that she didn't realize she had killed them. She thought that she had just put them to sleep and that they were going to wake up at some point. And she was really surprised to hear that she had actually killed them, which in my mind kind of makes sense, you know? It's like she didn't realize what she was actually as slow, and she had this mental disability that everyone said that she did. It makes sense that she would just think, oh, this is going to put them to sleep for a while, and then they'll wake back up, and me and Guy Berry will be married, and there's nothing they can do about it then. But she ends up passing away in March of 1934, and she is buried at the hospital. Her grave marker is, I think it's patient 301, and she's the only patient with a picture of her there. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this in now because I'm not sure where else to throw it in, but there have been sightings of a woman dressed in white at this hospital, and people believe it is Celie, to the point where they would call her their angel in white because they believe that it was Celie walking around this hospital. So now fast forward to 1939, and we are going to talk about Louie Bromfield, who was born in Mansfield, Ohio, and I believe he was also raised here. And he was a Pulitzer Prize winning author. He ended up living all around the US. He lived in Europe for a little bit. He was very well known, very popular, very famous. Also, don't judge me for putting foundation and powder on my neck, because I know there's going to be some of y'all bitter betties out there saying something about foundation on my neck and powder. Girl, that's why you have an orange streak on your face. Calm down. Anyway, he was very well known, very popular, very famous. And he decided that he wanted to move back to Ohio, where he was born. He kind of wanted to get back to his roots. And so when he moves back in 1939, he buys Malabar. And he I believe he named it Malabar, actually. It was just called like Pleasant Valley back then. But he names it Malabar. He built, what is it today, really? He built the main barn they have today. He built Pew Cabin. He built the big house. He pretty much made Malabar what it is today. And he wrote books there. A lot of famous people came to visit him. I know like Humphrey Bogart came. I know that like Marilyn Monroe came at one point. He had a lot of fame. There's actually a wall in the house of headshots of all the famous celebrities that came with signatures of them and like notes that they wrote to him and stuff, because he would always have them sign when they would come. And him and his wife lived there with his many animals. They had cats. The most notable one is a boxer dog that they had. They lived there until his death in 1956. They also had 3 daughters as well living with them. After Louie passed away, he always said that he wanted to make Malabar Farm a state park. He wanted to give it over to Ohio, and that's what he did. And now it is a state park open to the public. They have a visitor center you can go to. It's a really pretty place. But now we're going to get into the haunting, which is like I don't know, I'm like nervous to tell this. I'm scared. So there are 4 places on Malabar Farm property that are said to be haunted. So the first one that is said to be haunted, and the first place we're going to talk about is the main barn. It is right in front of the big house. And when Louie bought this property, there were still buildings from when Sealy's family lived there. And Sealy's dad, when he was alive, and how they made their money was he ran a grain processing mill on the property of Malabar Farm. So when Louie bought the property, he tore down that building, then he used parts of that building to build the main barn, which is, in my humble onion, why it is haunted, or some of the reasons why it's haunted. So in 2003, a play was written and performed there called The Ghost of Sealy Rose. And they would have practices and stuff at this barn. Like I said, it was performed there, so they would have practices and stuff too. And they said from the beginning of the rehearsals, the play was plagued with stuff happening. One of the main things that would happen all the time is the sound system would be working fine and then would just stop. And it just wouldn't work. They would do run-throughs and they would practice with it and it would be fine. And then as soon as they would start rehearsal, it would just completely stop working. And they just said it was really odd because it would happen all the time. And it would literally be working fine just a few seconds ago. And then it would just stop. It wouldn't work. It would shut down. Noises would come through it. It was just weird. Things would continually disappear. They would set them down and then turn away or leave, go back, and it'd be gone, and they would find it somewhere completely different. And I guess that happened a lot at the barn. Doors would also slam shut, like during a performance, they would just, all of a sudden, you would hear a door just slam shut out of nowhere. They would also hear strange noises throughout the barn during performances and practices and stuff. Just weird things, voices, footsteps, when there was be nobody there, no one was supposed to be talking. One of the big things, there's two like main things I read, and one of them was that during a performance, like a practice run, a light bulb just exploded in the barn, just randomly, just kind of like, not like the bulb blew, like the whole glass and everything just exploded. It just went kaput. One of the main things that I remember hearing on the ghost tours that I went on was the guy who wrote it and directed it was sitting in the audience one night during a performance, and it was like one of the final, not performance, one of the final rehearsals. And he said that from backstage he could see a light flicker on and off, but it wasn't like it was about to blow. It was like it would keep flickering, like someone was turning it on and off. And he said that it was just really odd because it hadn't done that at all, and it only did it during certain parts of the play. Like when it would get to Sealy murdering her family, then it would do it. Another place that is haunted, and again, I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this place, but it is the old Guy Berry house that is still standing. Anyway, I'm gonna set my face. Okay, don't know if you just heard that, but I just heard a really loud bump in my house, and I'm home alone, like I said. So that's fun. The other place that is haunted is the old Guy Berry house. It is still standing. It was used as a hostel, but that has since closed as well. I wasn't able to find a whole lot of stuff on the house because it has since closed. But one thing that I was able to find was that a lot of guests would report, do you see that highlight? Just, okay. A lot of guests that would stay the night would report the next day of them getting woken up to someone touching or playing with or tickling. Like, hi, this is like $5.99. They would report getting woken up to someone touching or tickling or playing with their feet. But I really want to make a foot fetish joke, but I feel like that's not the appropriate time, so I won't. Something else that people would also experience is smelling flowers, the smell of flowers, just kind of ran like wafting by, and multiple people would smell it at multiple times. It was something that would just happen, and then it would disappear, which people believe to be Sealy. The one thing that a lot of people said, and the thing that's probably the scariest in my humble opinion, they would see a figure of a woman dressed in white in the living room, sitting on the couch or walking towards the couch, and then when someone would approach her, she would disappear. I would freak out. But if you recall, that is also what they saw at the hospital where Celie was buried, was a woman dressed in white wandering around. So moving on to the most famous and like one of the most haunted places on Malabar Farm property, the Celie Rose house. Yes, it is said to be haunted. People have lived in the house, actually, after Celie Rose. And one of the stories that I have heard a few times is it was a family. It was a mom, dad, and little boy. And the mom and dad were downstairs one night, and the little boy was upstairs in his room playing when they started hearing him talk to someone. So they thought it was odd, and the dad went upstairs to, oh no. They thought it was odd, so the dad went upstairs to kind of see who he was talking to, and when he went up there, of course there was no one up there, but he said that it kind of smelled like flowers. So he asked his son, like, hey, who are you talking to? And his son said, oh, the woman in white. She was sitting in that chair over there. I would move. I would move. The thing that makes that story extra creepy is the fact that the room the little boy was staying in, that was his room, the room that he was living in and was playing in, used to be Celie's room. That was where Celie's room was located. Which, like, just... no. Something else that happened was during one of the ghost tours. It was this older gentleman, and he had his younger granddaughter with him. And at these ghost tours, they take you to Celie Rose's house, and they tell you the story, and they tell you some experiences that happened there. And then they let you walk around the house for a little bit. And while they were letting people walk around the house, the older gentleman came up to them, and he said that he was here with his granddaughter, and she was really freaked out because while he was telling the story of Celie Rose, she could see Celie sitting in one of the chairs listening the whole time. And then I just really freaked her out. Why did I decide to do this while I'm home alone? Like, that was not a smart decision on my part. Let me throw on some lower lashes and I'm going to finish this story off. Something else that people say, and this is one thing that happens a lot at the Celie Rose house, is that people who are driving by or walking by or who are, like, you know, on the tours and they're leaving, they will look up and see a woman standing in the second floor window staring, just like staring off into space, staring at them, staring kind of like sideways, which is even freakier because right here is a Celie Rose house, right here is the Guy Berry house, and she's looking that way at them. One thing that happened one night that is good for this employee because I wouldn't work there anymore. He was working late one night at the farm, and he said that he started hearing screams from the Celie Rose house. So he got on his little motorbike or whatever and rode over to the Celie Rose house. And he said when he got there, all the lights were off and the doors were locked. And he unlocked the doors and went into the house, which I wouldn't do. And he said that when he did that, there of course was no one in there and the house was empty. There's been a lot of ghost hunters that go to these houses and stuff. And it was actually featured, Malabar Farm was featured on Ghost Hunters, the TV show. And they're called COPS for short, it's Central Ohio Paranormal Society. And they went there hunting, and the people in the house said that at the same time, through radio, they heard a woman screaming. No one else heard it that was there at the big house or anything. It was just people who were in the Celie Rose house heard it. And then the last place we're going to talk about is the big house where Louie Bromfield lived. In this house, people say that lights will flicker on and off. They will hear a lot of footsteps, people talking. One lady, I remember hearing the story at one of the ghost hunts, said that she was closing up for the night, and when they do that, they have to walk through the house just to make sure no one's in there and everything like that. So she was doing that, went through, turned all the lights off, locked the house up, and was leaving. And then she said that she kind of looked back just to make sure, and she saw that some of the lights were still on. And she's like, you know, I thought that I turned them off, but I could have forgot. So I went ahead and went back into the house and turned those lights off, walked through again to make sure I got everything, and then locked the house back up. And she said as she was leaving, she turned back around and the same lights were on. And she said that she pieced out of there. She was like, I called my boss, said that happened, and I was leaving. and she said that she wouldn't go back into the house alone now. Something else that also happened, again, I heard at the ghost ghost walk, was that someone was there and she was working in her office and she took her granddaughters there, and when they were playing and she was somewhere else, and they have a dog bed and little dog bones because Louie Bromfield had boxer dogs and they're said to kind of still be there, and the little girls were playing with these bones and said they heard a dog jump up and heard like the clicking of toenails walking across a hardwood floor. So they jumped up and they ran up. People have, now this part I'm like scared to even talk about or show because I'm home alone, but people have seen and heard things, and one of the things that people saw, it was sent to this ghost hunting team, and it was someone who worked at Malabar Farm, and they were walking through the big house, closing down for the night, and they went outside, and they were walking around the premise of the big house on the outside, and they were taking pictures, and they took a picture through the window, and through the window, they capture what they think, and what I think, is a boxer dog. And then I'll show you the zoomed in picture too. Something else, when they were hunting in the big house and they were looking, they caught a lot of EVPs. I'll try to leave links down below so you can go check this out. But they were in one of the daughters' rooms and they caught a picture of an apparition standing in the doorway. I'll show you the zoomed in picture so you can definitely see it's. Oh my god, that like, no, like, that actually makes me sick to my stomach. I don't like that. And then there's one last thing that they have captured that I want to talk about. But again, I'm like really afraid to talk about it right now. But they were in the big house, and they were actually filming a documentary for the big house. And they were putting on an investigation for this documentary, and they were having a lot of issues with the basement. Like their equipment wouldn't work in the basement. It kept malfunctioning. It just wasn't, it was weird. Like the motion detectors kept going off and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they decided to go to the top of the staircase, and they started doing EVP, trying to figure out what was happening. And they catch a woman say, "Come to the basement." I'm gonna play it for you, but I'm very scared too. I'm gonna play it for you. I hope you can hear it. I'm gonna put it up. I know y'all heard that. I know you heard that. Quit lying. I'll play it for you again. I hate it. There were no women on this investigation, I should say. Let me play it again for you real quick. No. So the lipstick is on, but we are not done yet because I wanted to tell you my personal experiences before I end this video. This is the final look. I've been there a few times. I only have 2 experiences. The first one I want to tell you is about happened in the big house. It happened in that room where they found the apparition. And this, I'm not going to say is paranormal because it was after I saw that picture of the apparition, so it could have just been me being me. But this was the 3rd ghost tour I had been on, and I went into that room and just instantly got a sense of just dread, and my heart dropped, and it was like, I shouldn't be in there. And it wasn't anything of like negativity. It was more of like something was telling me like, hey, I would really rather you not be in here right now. Is it cool if you just like exit? Like they weren't like being like, get out now. It was just kind of like a, hey, like I really want to not be bothered. It wasn't anything to where I felt danger or scared. It was just like, I mean, I was scared, but it wasn't like I felt like in danger or anything. It was just kind of freaky, that feeling was of just, but I also could be freaked out. I saw that picture. They had just told us stories all night long. I could have just been freaked out by that, but that feeling was just such a weird feeling, and I had never had it the other 2 times I had been there. I had never had that experience or that feeling before. So it was kind of weird that I had it then. And then the second thing that happened was actually on the very first ghost tour I went on. I went with my neighbor, and she was volunteering at Malabar. We were at the Sealy Rose house, and they sat us down, told us the history, told us some of the things that happened. They didn't tell us about seeing a woman in the window at that point. That was something they didn't tell us about. I heard that the second time I went, the second ghost tour thingy. They told us, though, about people hearing things, seeing things, the little boy. They told us some other stories I don't really remember. And like I said, my neighbor was volunteering. So because she was volunteering, we had to stay in the house until everyone else left. That was kind of how it went. We had to kind of stay in the back of the pack and make sure everyone was keeping up and not falling behind. We were in the little kitchen area, and we had to stay until everyone was left the house. I remember my neighbor telling me, you can go wait outside. And I was like, no, it's fine, I'll stand here. So they were all talking, and then we left. I watched this man who was a tour guide lock up the house, and then we get on the trailer. And I look back at the house, and I see a woman standing in one of the second floor windows. And I look at my neighbor, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say her name. I'm like, neighbor, like, do you see that? And she's like, I don't see anything. I'm like, you don't see the woman standing in the window looking out? And she's like, no, you're probably just seeing things because, like, you're freaked out, you know, whatever. Like, you just heard all these stories. You're probably just seeing things. And when I looked back up, the woman was gone. So I was like, okay, I'm probably just seeing things. It's fine. So then there was a woman in that tour group, and she was taking a lot of pictures. She had, like, EVPs. She came ready. And she had taken a picture of the house before we left, and as the trailer was leaving, she was flipping through the pictures that she had taken of the house, and she gets to that last one, and she goes, oh my God, look. And in that picture, in the exact window that I saw the woman, was a woman standing there looking out of the window. And when I tell you, I was like, see, I told you so, I told you. And she's like, we have to tell somebody. And I was like, no, because in my mind, I'm like, if I talk about it, it's real. But if I just leave it to myself and we don't tell anybody about it, it's not real. So I never told anybody. I told her, and she's like, okay, I won't tell anybody. It still sticks with me because I was like, see, I'm not crazy. I saw something. So there you go. This is the finished look. It kind of looks a little crazy on camera, but also a little good. That highlight, though. All of this stuff's under $10. I think this was the most expensive thing. It was $80 something. And then this was the cheapest. This was 99 cents. I will leave everything that I used on my face today down below, along with prices. And with that said, I hope you like this video. I got thoroughly spooked. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.